Good morning, everybody. Really excited about the training today. I think hopefully you guys saw what Olivia sent out yesterday, and we're going to dive into it. You guys can, if you can, go to the email that Olivia sent out last night, open those questions up, and we're going to hop into those. Before we hop into them, I just want to say this. So there's a guy named Gino Blafari who helped build out Keller Williams from scratch and do all their recruiting and build those things out. As you guys already know at this point, I am a huge fan of stealing from real estate when it comes to mortgage sales and all sales process. And the reason for this is very simple. It takes almost no money to become your own broker as a realtor, right? To open your own shop. It takes almost no overhead. It takes 3 years of experience with your license. You don't need to have any sort of a sales track record or anything else. So the barrier to entry to opening a real estate brokerage is incredibly low. You just have to basically be a realtor with 3 years of experience and have a couple dollars. And as a result, that's why, and there's not a lot of value to add to realtors, right? And that's why you see realtors at places getting 100% commission, these different things. And so the long story short of that is that real estate brokers had to get really good at creating value for realtors to try to attract people and recruit people. And that works in 2 ways. One is you see it with Ninja Selling or the Millionaire Real Estate Agent by Gary Keller. They have these amazing training platforms for what it is to be a really good realtor to generate business, and they develop those things, and we've stolen from a bunch of that stuff. The second piece of it is they'd be really good at recruiting, because how do you get one real estate agent to leave one broker and join another broker if there's really not a ton of value that you can create? The technology is basically all the same. It's been uniform. You have to really have a better value proposition, which is you. You as the broker owner have to be the value, or as the team leader to be the value in recruiting somebody to go to your real estate team. And so I read a bunch about Gino and how he did it a number of years back. I tried doing some of the stuff, but then I got away from it for a while. During the pandemic, it was hard. I preferred to use some of the systems in person. And then I've circled back to it with Rich over the last few months, and it's been a real game changer for us on the recruiting trail and helping us really build meaningful relationships and differentiate. And we've done it through going through some of these questions. And also, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a short script that I'll send out to you guys later for how I'm doing some of my intro calls when I'm cold calling loan officers. But my hunch is that as well as it's working for recruiting, it would work as well or even better potentially for helping you develop more meaningful relationships with your realtors. Give me 1 second. I just want to take a quick screenshot of who's here and what we got going on. Awesome. So guys, by the way, if you guys have your cameras on, I like you better. All right. So here's what I want is I want to walk through these questions, why we asked them in the order that we asked them in, and why we think it builds so much trust, and the psychology of some of it. When we talk about building meaningful relationships, right? We want to do business with people we know, like, and trust. Oftentimes, so when we set up that coffee meeting or that happy hour meeting with a realtor, we start talking about our value propositions as a company, what we offer, programs, products, and the reality is that stuff generally does not matter all that much to the realtors. Mostly these realtors want to feel like that you and them have a personal bonding connection and that you're going to take care of them because you care about them. If you think about if you've been doing this a while, the most meaningful realtor relationships you have are the ones where you guys talk about things other than work. Hopefully you've actually had a realtor meeting where you set up and basically you didn't even get to the mortgage side. It was just like telling about your life. These are the questions that lead to somebody falling in love with you, right? And we're going to go through each question and why we ask it. Even better than this, so I'll say this is kind of the cold call script that Gino recommends using. And again, he's using it to recruit realtors. That's essentially what you guys are doing as well, right? Hello, John. Hey, John, this is Mark Gordon with Princeton Mortgage. The reason I'm calling is because one of the goals I've set this year is to meet with every high potential realtor in our area. Not every top producing agent, because again, not every agent you're going to call is going to be a top producer. You don't want to blow smoke. You want to say every high potential realtor in our area. I've heard a lot of nice things about you from so-and-so, wherever we want to have that connection. And I want us to get to know each other and share ideas for navigating this market. Are you available this week or next to get together or schedule a call, right? So he's going into this get together or schedule a call right away. The questions that we're going to go over today are for that meeting or that next phone call, okay? We want to make sure that before we go into these questions, we have a 45-minute plus block where we can really dive in and dig in with somebody to really get to know them on a higher level. Now, I'll tell you, I've already started using this with loan officers as recruits. It has been awesome. So again, in that first call, am I telling somebody I'm trying to recruit them or I'm trying to get them to send me business? No. Hey, I set a goal for this year. By the way, people love working with people who have big goals. They're already going to be attracted to you because you're the kind of person that sets goals. You're telling them that you think they're high potential and you just want them to get to know, you just want to get to know this person to start a relationship. It's a pretty small ask then to set up another call for you to get to do that. I've been having a lot of success with that. There's no pressure in that next phone conversation. We're not talking about, will we work together, the products I offer, or anything else. And by the way, here's what's even crazier. When I'm doing these interviews right now with loan officers, I'm going through the second call. At the end of that second call, we're really still never talking about Princeton. I'm not talking about the Princeton selling system, our amazing operations team, Princeton promises, the fact that we get loans closed. Maybe it comes up for a small amount here or there. That second phone call is all about them and getting them to talk about their lives. And at the end of it, they're asking me for another call. They're saying, I really enjoyed this conversation. I'd love to have another call to learn more. And by the way, like, or I really like what you guys have going on at Princeton. They say, and they sort of say things like they know us or know me, and I'm not selling us. All I'm doing is investing in my relationship with this person and listening to what they have coming back. So this is working for me. I think it's going to work for you guys. I think you guys should try it. I think you guys should print out the questions that Olivia sent out today and have them on your desk for when you're having these phone calls or meetings with real estate agents, and take notes on them, put them inside your notebook, and learn them and follow the process. Hannah's already on top of it. So again, calling, hey John, this is Mark Gordon over at Princeton Mortgage. The reason I'm calling is because one of the goals I've set this year is to meet every high potential realtor in our area. I've heard a lot of nice things about you from Sally over at Remax, and I want us to get to know a little more. I want to get to know each other and share ideas for navigating this market. Are you available this week or next to get together and schedule a call? Right into it, right? Right into it, okay? So let's go through the questions themselves. Everybody have the questions in front of them? These are magical interview questions. Now, what is my goal for this meeting? I want this person to fall in love with me. Anybody here ever seen the movie Crazy Stupid Love? One of my favorite, most underrated movies of all time. Love it, right? In the scene where Ryan Gosling and whatever her name is, I can never remember. Somebody help me. Emma Stone. See, Katie, you can just mouth it. I'm a lip reader. Emma Stone fall in love with each other. They fall in love because they start talking about, like, tell me about your mom. Tell me about your dad. Tell me how you grew up. Tell me about this coffee commercial, right? That whatever that resonated from you when you were a kid. And they fall in love because they get to know each other on that deeper level. So now I'll ask you guys, when was the last time you had a conversation like that with anyone? Where someone took a real interest in you and asked you about how you grew up, what your relationship was like with your parents, who your greatest influences were when you were a kid, what your greatest memory is of being younger, what your worst memory is. I bet whoever you shared those things with, you feel really close to, right? And so what we want to do is take a genuine interest in this person and their lives and really get to know them on a deeper level for two reasons. One is it's going to make them feel close to us. Two is, if I'm going to serve this person in our relationship, whether I'm recruiting them as a loan officer to work at Princeton or I'm recruiting them as a realtor that I want to do business with, the more I know about them allows me to know more the best way that they want to be served, right? And so all the anxiety we get from guessing what somebody wants from us can be eliminated if we just kind of know where they're coming from and what they're all about, right? Now, I will say I have a small advantage in doing this. I am fascinated by human psychology and behavior. It's what I majored in college. I'm genuinely interested in other people, even when I don't like them. I'm genuinely interested in what made them that way. And so you have to ask yourself, if you're not genuinely interested in the other person, why is that? What are you afraid of? What obligation would you have to this person if you really knew about them and were interested? Why are you shying away from it? You need to be a student of what makes your realtors and your referral partners and the people you're in relationships with tick. This will also work in your personal life. You start asking these questions to someone that you meet at a bar, you will do really well, right? And so let's walk through them. First question, how would you describe how you run your business? I'd like some participation from the crowd. Even if I can't see your face, you can feel free to unmute and talk to me. Why is this the first question? I just give you all this hype about the personal questions we're about to ask, but why do we start with how do you run your business?
Because you're going to run your business the way you run your life.
Maybe, and I like that as a potential answer and a thing to listen for. I like that. Why else?
People might feel uncomfortable talking about themselves and their personal life right off the bat.
Yes, right? This is a open-ended softball question that is completely normal for you to for a loan officer to ask a realtor, right? It's a normal question. Hey, I want to get to know about you. How do you run your business, right? It's a softball question. It's one that people are usually excited to talk about. If I'm a successful realtor, I want to talk about how I run my business. If I'm a successful loan officer, I want to talk about how I run my business. I'm excited to tell you. What's really also interesting about this is that you will learn so much about the level of the person you're dealing with by how they answer this question, right? So you will know a lot about, am I dealing with somebody who thinks running their business is, well, I do open houses and that's their answer, or running my business, which is like, I have a plan every day. I spend 10 to 12 hours a week prospecting. I believe in marketing. Here's my approach. And like, you will learn a lot about the level of the person you're dealing with. But most importantly, you get them excited to talk about something that they're excited to talk about that feels totally normal, and they get used to, or they start to psychologically accept the fact that they're going to be answering your questions. The way Jamie's smiling, it makes me think that he's doing artwork of my face somewhere and putting me on like some giant fat person. All right, something like that. So, guys, building those meaningful relationships, right? And having those deeper conversations. We want to get this person talking and opening up. Anybody here uncomfortable asking somebody how they run their business? No, of course not, right? It's an easy one. Some of the other questions can be slightly more uncomfortable, right? And so, but we want to get them in the process of opening up and answering stuff, right? Second question, how did you get started in the business? Is that a controversial, difficult to answer personal question? No, it's an easy one and something that they can reference. But here's what it does. They immediately start to reminisce. Now, this changes the personality of the person we're talking to. What do I mean by that? I'll give you an example for an interview process. When I get a loan officer on the phone, if I don't go through this process, they're trying to answer a couple questions in their head. Even when they pretend they're not focused on this stuff. It's how many basis points are you going to pay me? What does your pricing look like? What products do you have? That's what they're thinking, right? Those things are all very surface level in the moment. And when you think about what's important to you, yes, those things are important when you're making a job choice, but are they the most important thing? When you start asking people about how they got started in the business and what their journey was like, they start to focus on other things outside of those tangible things, right? Well, and by the way, this is usually someone gets so excited when I ask this question. They're like, well, it's actually a funny story. They're like, I was working here and so, and this person walked in and I had a friend who was doing this and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, and they're reminiscing all these meaningful things that led them to this moment in their life, right? So they start focusing on their past and their story and where they came from. And by the way, they're sharing this, and it's easy to be genuinely interested and ask follow-up questions and go, oh yeah, and so this, and where did you start and why did you leave that company? You're going into it. So you're taking a real interest in them and you're listening, but now psychologically, they're in a different place. They started out with what can you do for me in this call, or what's my relationship with you going to do for me? And now they're thinking about, wow, reflecting on my journey and I got here, the special people I met along the way, the circumstances that brought me here, it changes how they feel in the rest of this conversation, right? It opens them up in a reflective way to the meaningful moments in their life, right? So it's a simple question. How'd you get started, right? But when people reflect, they change. What's important to them changes. Great. Now I already have you comfortable answering my questions. We've answered some of the questions. You've talked probably for 5 or 10 minutes. You'd be surprised how far you can get on those first 2 questions, right? It takes a while, usually, if someone's fun. Where are you originally from? Is this a deeply personal question? No, it's another softball, but it does shift us mildly into personal stuff, right? So we went from business, open up, business, tell me about your past and reflect, personal, tell me about your past and reflect, right? So you see, we've done this soft, subtle shift that allows this to not feel like an interrogation, right? And by the way, you have to comment and ask follow-up questions. Otherwise, this will feel like an interrogation. And so you don't want to just ask the questions and write down the answers. You have to be engaged, right? Where are you originally from? I'm originally from here. Oh, is that where you lived your whole life? Great. We want to go into have some of those other questions. We're now reflecting on the person's personal life, right? What else do you do besides work? Is that a fair question to ask a realtor when you're having these conversations? What are some of your interests outside of work? What do you do when you're not working? These are but again, it changes for us what's important to us, right? By the way, what are some of your answers that you immediately go to asking what you do outside of work? Oh, I spend time with my friends. I spend time with my family. I spend time outdoors. I go to the gym. And suddenly, all those like micro things, like what are my basis points or what products do you have or what are you going to do for me? Those things start to disappear into actually the other things that are important to me in my life. So it changes the psychology of that conversation.
Oh, no problem.
We're going to mute Woody if we can. Perfect. All right. It's Woody's first Teams meeting. So here's where we get froggy, right? And by the way, we changed. The question from Gino is, what was your family situation growing up? For me, that feels uncomfortable, and also like I might be start talking about some things I don't want to dive into, but I do want to get a little uncomfortable. So how I've been asking that is, what was your life like growing up, right? So where are you originally from? What else you decided to work? What was your life like for you when you were growing up? You will be shocked at how comfortable or how much time people will spend telling you about how they grew up and the things that it will reveal about them. Now, let me ask you a question again. When was the last time somebody asked you a question like this where you just got to talk to them about how you grew up? Here's the magical part of what's about to happen as we go through these questions. And by the way, you should do this with your coworkers. If you guys are on a team, you should be doing this with your manager, whatever you're doing. You guys should get to know each other on this level. It will make all of the petty micro things that get between people feel like nothing. At the end of this conversation, this realtor will have shared more with you about their life, and you will know more about this person and their life than anyone they've met since they were 20 years old. Maybe other than their significant other if they shared these things along the way. And that will make them draw to you because you're going to take a genuine interest in life, and you will know all these things about them, right? And again, it's not to be manipulative, although it does manipulate. It is, I want to learn the best way to serve this person, right? I want to learn how this person likes to work and what makes them tick so that I can be what they need me to be to deliver the best possible experience. You will often get some of these questions that come up here answered by asking the first question. People are telling you about their memories or this thing or that thing. But I love to go into, hey, of all those memories, what's the one that stands out the most? Right? And by the way, I listened to Rich do a couple of these where I was kind of in the background listening. And when he got to a place where maybe this felt slightly uncomfortable, he would say like, hey, I know this is a little bit unconventional, but it's really important to me that I really get to know the people that I might want to work with in the future. Do you mind if I ask you a couple of like maybe a slightly more personal questions? Everyone's like, no, they're already in the flow of answering my questions. They're already being compliant. They're already understanding the format of the interview. We're asking questions, they're answering them, right? No, it'd be great. Hey, like what's one memory that stands out to you from when you were a child? Now we're in real reflective mode, right? They're thinking back. They're really, everybody in their own mind right now, think about if I ask you that question, what your answer might be. What's one memory from your child that stands out more than any other? It's a hard question. It's usually not particularly obvious for many people. And by the way, it was usually something that was incredibly impactful when you stumble upon it, right? It again changes what's important to you from the meeting, changes your personality and your movement in this moment. Question here, were you active in school? I'll be honest with you, I feel like I usually get the answer to that one pretty quickly. It's about how people grew up. They tell me about school or not school, and I get into that. I get some sense around that. That might be better for an interview than just actually getting to meet a realtor, but I like it for the interview question. Who from your childhood had the biggest impact on you? Again, this is one like the memory one. Think about your answer to that question. I have a really hard time with that question. I have a bunch of answers, and I don't know that one person particularly stands out. And by the way, the people with the biggest impact, is it positive, negative? Is it both? Right? How do you factor in those things? You will be surprised that people get excited to answer these questions. And I'm going to talk about my own personal experience with this a little bit too. Rich did this to me when he interviewed me. He went through these. I don't remember him asking the questions, but but I do remember answering all of them. So I want to say that again to you. I don't remember Rich asking me these questions, but I do remember talking to Rich about all of this stuff when we had our interview. When I showed up at Princeton for my first day of work, I realized that there were 100 questions I would have normally asked somebody about a mortgage company before I went to work for them that I'd never asked Rich. A lot of them were things I found out that I had to build once I got here that I assumed were already here. The company had been around a long time. I was pretty surprised, but they also didn't matter. I decided I wanted to work with Rich, that he was going to make me better, and that him asking these questions, he was the kind of thoughtful, smart leader, and he had showed me all the culture and values of the company, how he'd written those things down, all the books that he'd read. I was attracted to working for him. I thought he would make me better, and that's why I came to Princeton. This worked on me. It was kind of a magical experience. We had a 1-hour conversation plan from 4 to 5. I left his office at 9:15. Right? And I didn't come actually work for Rich for 2 or 3 more months. Actually, because I was still working where I was working, and then I called him and said, hey, I've decided I'm going to move on. I just wanted to let you know. And I wasn't even like, and he's like, cool, let's do it. And I was like, let's do what? He's like, let's work together. And that's how those conversations went. But we had already built a relationship by having that time together and going through these questions where we could just be like, let's do it. And we knew what we were talking about. So powerful, right? So to build a relationship with those realtors, which is like, man, like you guys will have a real connection at the end of this process. You will really know about them. What did that person teach you? The person that had the biggest impact on you. As you look at your life past, there will be ups and downs. What's one of the highest? And what does that tell you about yourself? So you think about this again, we're into the personal stuff now. We get the rhythm going. What was one of the highest highs of your life? What does that say about you? That moment was the highest? Probably a lot. Probably have some very differing answers here about what was the best moment of someone's life. Probably tell us a lot about that person and what's really important to them, right? What about your lowest lows? What got you through those, right? Man, we are getting deep, right? We're getting deep and there's a process to it, right? If a young person asked you for advice on how to live your life, what would you tell them? Right? By the way, like you're getting really thoughtful about somebody. You're getting to know that person. Really, they're thinking about these things. They're getting to know themselves. These are questions they probably haven't answered for themselves in a long time. They're actually starting to discover what's important to them on this call. Now, I do remember Rich asking me this last question. And by the way, how I answered it changed how I lived my life from that moment forward. Okay? This is 5 years ago. When your life is over, how do you want to be remembered? And I had a snap answer that shocked me. I had not thought about it before in this way. I didn't have the words for it, but my snap answer was, I hope there's a lot of people at my funeral who say that I helped them get to where they want to go. And I had never said those words before. I'd never thought about it in that way before. But from that moment since, I have lived my life with that thought every single day. Right? So it's no wonder then at the end of that process, I was ready to go work for that guy. I wanted to go work with that person. Right? I thought it would make me better. I was attracted to that opportunity. That question changed my life. You just asked me a question that made me think about something that changed how I frame my life. Right? And so what an impact that you can make on these realtors or these people who's having conversations by going through these questions and building that relationship. Now think to yourself, how many of you guys have a realtor you've been working with for years that you don't know the answers to any of these questions? What's binding you guys in your relationship? Right? When another loan officer calls somebody that you know all this stuff about, they're not going to take that call. That's an impenetrable bond to know these people this way. Right? And so I share these as we go through these questions because I think it changes the entire game. Instead of you selling to this person what you bring to the table, what Princeton brings to the table, all stuff about us, which by the way, we need to have those things so that we can arm ourselves because they will be the reason someone stays with us. And they will be the things that make us better. And we have all the stuff that we need to be differentiators, and we'll continue to give you guys stuff to talk about. But we'll make you have a meaningful relationship with somebody is going through these questions and helping them discover what's truly important to them. I will tell you this. What my compensation was at Princeton was never going to determine whether I came and worked at Princeton. If Rich was the kind of person, he's not a fraud, he was going to ask me these questions, take an interest and have a 5-hour meeting with me, I was pretty sure he would pay me fairly. The same thing happens with these loan officers. So here's what happens after I go through these questions with somebody. They realize they haven't asked me any other questions. So whether it's on this call or usually my next call with them, they start going like, well, and they start like apologizing for even asking. Like, listen, I really enjoy our time together. I just want to make sure, like, you guys do USDA, right? I'm like, yeah. And like, can we price the deal together? I'm like, sure, let's look at pricing. And they're like, cool, you're in range. They're not micro analyzing it. They're just like, yeah, that's right. And what about compensation? I'm like, well, here's what the pricing looks like at this compensation. Here's what it works like. And they're like, great, I can work with that. And those long, detailed, painstaking conversations that I used to have with loan officers, where they were analyzing and overanalyzing and looking for any reason not to come to Princeton. They're now just praying as they ask me that I'm not going to blow up their world and give them a reason not to come to Princeton. That's how different the game becomes, right? It's like, man, I really like Mark. I want to come work for him. I really hope he's not going to give me bad news on these rates or that they don't do this product I need because I want to go work there. And that's where the mindset is, as opposed to peppering me with questions and interrogating me at the beginning. It's like, oh, well, you guys have everything I want, but your jumbo pricing above 90% isn't where I like it, so I'm out. The things that are important change by asking these questions and having that meaningful relationship. So I'm going to leave it there. It's 9:42. What questions do you guys have? Tell me what you guys think about this, what your reaction to it is. Has it ever been done to you that you can think of? Give me some feedback. Let's have a conversation.
Mark, I have a quick question.
Sure.
I had a neighbor that was just a great conversationalist, well-educated. Her husband was a professor at a college, and she would just walk around the neighborhood and we became friends. And she would always ask you questions about yourself, just like you're talking about. She never talked about herself, but there was an awkward moment. We became really good friends. Like she wanted to ask you all these questions and get to know you. And it's obvious she had some kind of training like you're talking about, but she would never divulge anything about herself. And so my question is, in your experience with asking these questions, when do you go, I got to give a little bit to make this not like awkward for the other person? Because if they're telling you everything about you hear me, what I'm saying.
100%. So by the way, this happened to me yesterday. So in the middle of this, the guy was like, hey, just real quick about the interest rates. He's like, can you just go over program me? I'm like, absolutely 100%. Let's work it out. We side view into the thing. I give him the rate. And then he's like, cool. He's like, just so you know, Mark, he's like, I've talked to about 20 recruiters over the last 5 years. It's always like pulling teeth to get the rates. The fact that you were willing to go over it with me that quickly, man, that means a lot to me. You weren't afraid to go over it. And I'm like, yeah. And then I immediately went back into my questions, right? And so my answer is, if they ask me a question, I'm always going to answer it. I'm going to answer it to the fullest of my ability. I'm always willing to be super vulnerable with everybody, right? But I'm going to keep control of the conversation in what I call advancing the sale, right? And so I'm so glad you brought that up. Here's my answer for this. Here's what we think about that. Which by the way leads me to kind of my next question, like who from your childhood would you say had the biggest impact on you? And I want to answer completely and fully and with all intention. I do want to give, and I certainly don't ever want to be dodgy or act like this person shouldn't know the information. I want to be very comfortable when someone asks me a question, answering that question. At the same time, I still want to give them the ball back, right? So thank you for this ball. I will answer your question. I'll hold the ball. Okay, great. I'm done with that question. Here's the ball back, and we're going to keep going in that direction. And so I do think that, because I think that's a very important thing. I think it will feel manipulative if you are not willing to give back. And for anybody here who knows me, like I'm really an open book. I mean, I share almost everything with almost everyone, and so I feel like I'm within my integrity by asking these questions and asking somebody else to do the same. And by the way, if they don't want to share it, then they'll tell me. And by the way, what you're really telling me is, hey, you're not ready to have a meaningful relationship with me. Maybe we can work together, maybe we don't, but I'm okay because I know there's enough people out there that will enjoy this, that I will then build those meaningful relationships with. And by the way, when you come to work here as a loan officer, or when you work with me as a realtor, I want us to really enjoy that experience and know each other and have that going on. And I'm willing to not work with the people that maybe don't want to go through this, because I know how much easier things are going to be when we do go through it, right? You can get through anything with somebody if you guys know each other at this level. What else? What other questions, thoughts, comments? Anybody here like it's just like too much for me? I can't do it. But go ahead, Ray. Ask your question.
Yeah. What was the name of the guy who wrote this?
Gino Blafari. I'm not great at spelling last names, but I will take a look. It's Blefari. And by the way,
Thanks.
there's like a whole deck on it too that you can find.
Thank you.
What else? No one else has any thoughts? Everybody, so cool. We're gonna commit to it. We're gonna do it. We're gonna try it. Next in-person meeting you have with a realtor you don't know, you're gonna go through the questions. I think you should do it. It's powerful. Powerful. And you say something, listen, you know, it might be a little strange to you, but it's really important to me that I get to know about you. If we're gonna work together, I really want to know kind of what makes you tick and how I can make sure I deliver you the most value. Right? I think it's a totally normal thing to do. I think we'd all have strong relationships if we did more of it. All right, guys, I'm going to leave it there. For tomorrow's training, we're going to be rolling out the government buy down products. So Quentin will be running that, but I will be here. If you, so do any research you have, ask any questions you have, look online, come prepared for that. But I appreciate the training today. Please rate the meeting. Please give feedback on the meeting. And let's finish really strong this week. Keep making those power hour phone calls and building those connections. Again, if you guys want to, I will send out that that quick script about having a goal to meet every high potential realtor. I'll get that out to you guys before the power hour today. Happy selling, everybody.